Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nordic Business Ethics Talk Live. My name is Niina Ratsula, and I'm hosting today, all without Anna, our session, as unfortunately Anna couldn't join. But no worries, we have an excellent guest here with me joining this conversation, which is about whistleblowing. And I'm sure that many of you find this very important discussion, even though we have been talking about whistleblowing for quite many years, quite intensively. But we had over 300 registrants for the event, so that tells me that we are having an important and interesting discussion. I think that when it comes to whistleblowing, during the past few years, we've been attending to numbers of various webinars and seminars around the topic, and maybe some might think that we've done discussing. But here we at the Nordic Business Ethics, we believe that the discussion hasn't actually even started, because the important thing is not just the technical whistleblowing channel, but it's everything else. So how do we manage the information that we receive through those channels, and how we actually then lead into something that will actually change behaviors within the organizations. Today, I'm going to share you a little bit of the Nordic Business Ethics Survey data concerning whistleblowing. And I can already now say that what we can see from the last year result is that actually there are less people who would not be speaking up. So this is a positive a trend towards more open speaking up culture. However, it's not that simple as our survey results will show. But what we will be discussing today with our guest is, first of all, are we ready to see an increase in the whistleblowing reports? And should we expect to have more information through the channels that more and more companies are having today? Then we're going to talk a little bit on the EU directive implementation on the national level. So how does that look like, for example, from the external reporting point of view? And then we're going to talk about the investigations. So for big organizations, it's quite normal to have the processes in place, but what about smaller organizations? Do they have the capacity and capability of handling the reports as they should be? So these are the questions that we're going to be talking today. And once again, we are hosting this event together with our excellent partners, my speakers, and DLA Piper. And our guests today are three amazing ladies. Well, first of all, we have joining us Mikaela Alberi, who is our regular guest already. So she's been joining many of our events before, and I think I have given her the title of Queen of Ethics and Compliance in the Nordics because she really has a very long history within this field, and she is one of those persons, the pioneers in the field. So Mikaela has over 30 years of global experience from legal work, ethics and compliance, and has been a true gift for engaging those around her. Mikaela is an advocate for empowering leaders at all levels in organizations to embrace a personal responsibility for the decisions that we make. And she's held several positions for ethics and compliance in many multinationals, such as Telia Company and Getinge. Our second guest is Karin Henriksson. So Karin, she is then a true pioneer on the whistleblowing area. So she's the founder of WhistleBee, which I'm sure that is a very familiar whistleblowing service provider for all of us. The company was founded in 2012 to meet the need for a secure and user-friendly European whistleblowing system. And today, WhistleBee is part of the Navex company. And Karina has worked before whistleblowing as a business ethics consultant and for European institutions, and has followed this field very closely for a long time. So very happy to have also Karin joining the discussion. And then lastly, our third guest is joining from the DLA Piper. So Jenny Nilsson is the Data Privacy and Information Security Practice Group in Sweden, heading that group in Sweden. And Jenny provides advice relating to all GDPR and privacy and information security related matters, and which we know that these are very linked to the theme of whistleblowing investigation and disciplinary actions. And Jenny is a superstar and was ranked as a rising star in 2020 and 2021, and as a next generation partner in 22 by Legal 500. So with this group of people, I know we're going to have a very fruitful discussion on whistleblowing. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
Great. So let's try kind of let's start by looking back. So when we look back on the history of whistleblowing, and how does it look like? So Karin, I want to ask this question from you because you've been following the field for quite many years, so already around 15 years or so. So how are your thoughts on this? Karin, you're muted.
So thank you for this question. And yes, when we started WhistleBee approximately 10 years ago, the field was totally different. Actually, the idea of whistleblowing channels in European companies was driven by an American law, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, requiring all American companies by that time to have a whistleblowing channel for anonymous reporting on corruption and financial crimes. And the EU didn't quite agree on private companies having channels for reporting on possible crimes. So the standpoint at that time was that it is a matter solely for authorities. And I would say that also at a national level, the skepticism against whistleblowing was very widespread. In Sweden, for example, companies said that this inclusive Nordic leadership style would be ruined with a whistleblowing scheme, while in countries where anonymous reporting brought back horrible memories from World War II, the resistance against whistleblowing channel was compact. So I think that it has been super interesting to follow this the fundamental change during the last 10 years, and I think the reason to this is that we can see that certain issues, let's say corruption, are very hard to detect if not a brave whistleblower is stepping up and blowing the whistle. And also, I must say that I'm very glad that EU has taken a wider ESG scope when it comes to whistleblowing than it is stated in the Sarbanes-Oxley Act.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you, Karin, for sharing the thoughts. Sure. And so, Jenny, welcome, first of all, also to join the discussion. I want to ask Jenny from you that what do you see that what has driven the regulatory developments within the field, and what has been the kind of driving force for the whole EU directive on whistleblowing?
Well, I'm not sure what's been the driving force, but I think that the biggest differences are that it's much broader now, since it includes an obligation for all operators, as it's called, like organizations and companies, to have specific whistle blowing channels if they are more than 50 employees, which hits a lot of organizations then, obviously. And then there is also a stronger protection in general for whoever is brave enough or that wants to blow the whistles. So I think those are the two main news really, and that would have the biggest impact, but both on the organizations that are obliged to have the channels, but then also for individuals. And I think people in general may have become more, at least in Sweden, when we have whistleblowing act implementing the directive, that people are way more aware now, because there's been a lot of buzz about it, I think, or is it mostly social media channels? I'm not sure, but I think it's almost hard to miss now that it exists. Then there's also a big number of Swedish authorities that have been tasked with also offering external channels within their respective areas of competence. And the Work and Environment Authority that has this general area then.
Yeah, interesting. And while I'm just in a second giving the floor to Mikaela, so I want to also engage all of you in the audience. So we are going to have now a poll where you can pull your answer to the question that have you seen increase in the whistleblowing reports during the past 12 years? So please select the option that fits for you the best, and then we'll see in a few moments that how does it look like for the audience. And by the way, if you have any questions to our guests today, feel free to use the chat and ask your questions. This is the perfect time to do that. But then over to you, Mikaela. How does this whole development see from your angle? You've been in the field for quite some time and seen how the whole speak up culture has evolved.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I have been in the field for a while, and you talk about my 30-year career. It's 40 these days,
no.
So time is passing quickly. But there are so many thoughts in my head right now, because I am thinking about the discussion that was in Sweden from the beginning in Europe about we were really repelled by the idea of whistleblowing. There were so many reasons why we hated whistleblowing. And we really did not want it. But now I think that many companies and politicians and people and professionals are starting to understand that the alternative is even worse. So if we are going to choose between having a whistleblowing channel in the company where we can deal with the problems ourselves, or we can sit back and wait till the disgruntled employees goes to the journalists and we have a crisis all over the world, then it's like choosing between pest or cholera. Maybe it's better to have a speak up line. So I actually think that has driven the awareness of that fixing your own problems is maybe not such a bad idea after all. So I think that has been driving. So now when we talk about whistleblowing in companies, I think really I very seldom hear within the businesses that they don't like it or they don't want it or they think it's bad. I actually think it's pretty welcomed. But I also think that because of this audience that we have here today, I also want to share my own progression in this field, because my progression right now is that I don't speak as much about speak up as I used to do. Because now I speak more about listening up, because I think that companies and managers and leaders in companies and businesses are failing on the listening part. So if we can listen better, then we will have a much better opportunity to pick up the signs that we need to pick up even before the actual whistleblowing in the speak up line happens.
That is an excellent point. I fully agree. So let's listen up. Good, but let's give the audience still a few more minutes to answer the poll that we have. And while you are doing that, so let me share with you a few statistics from the Nordic Business Ethics Survey. So I wanted to bring up 3 points from the survey. As you remember, we launched the Nordic Business Ethics Survey last October in 2022, and this was the third time we launched the Nordic Business Ethics Survey. And if you haven't downloaded the report yet, so you can do so by going through the link that is available in the chat while we speak. And there are many questions in the report, but a few questions particularly concerning the whistleblowing. So the first question here, this is about the speaking up. So we asked first various observations when we did this in the first time in 2019. The not reporting figure was 47%. Then in the next year, 2020, 62% did not speak up. And now that we asked this last year with a little bit different way, only 23% said that I did not speak up. So although we cannot compare these figures exactly, we can maybe draw a conclusion that people are more likely to somehow react when they are making observations of unethical behavior. But here what I want to highlight, and I hope you can see, if you cannot see it, so just download the report and look at yourself. But based on this survey, only 5% says that they use the whistleblowing channel for reporting their concern. So here we can say that definitely the usage of whistleblowing channels is very low, yet among most of the employees when we talk about the work life in general. Also, interestingly, if we look at the young, age generations, so there is a quite interesting difference between the younger and the older one. So if we look at the 18 to 19 years old, only 13% said that I did not speak up at all, but I did use some method to speak up. And the number is 34% for over 50-year-olds. So meaning that there are people who are younger are more likely to report. Well, then the next slide, I wanted to share then just a few kind of maybe concerning aspects from our survey. So we asked next that, did you experience any personal disadvantage or retaliation after raising a concern about the unethical conduct? And as we know, the whole whistleblowing legislation is about non-retaliation. So this is a very important question. And to our surprise, over 30% said yes in all countries and in all positions that yes, I did experience some kind of a disadvantage. And if we look at the answers of the top managers, so over 50% of the top managers experienced retaliation. And here I think it's very important to remember that this is not just about the lower level employees who are afraid of retaliation, but it can be also a real concern at the top level. And then the third thing I wanted to point out here is the organizational awareness. So typically when we work in multinationals, we are keen to think that, okay, we have a whistleblowing channel and everyone knows about it. But here, if we look at the results that we had, so no matter in which country you were or in which role, less than half of the respondents recognized that their organization would even have a whistleblowing channel. And Finland was the worst here. So only 22% of the respondents in Finland were aware of their organization's whistleblowing channel. And what worried me most was this publicly listed answer. So 48% of the publicly listed company respondents said that they are not aware of their, or that they were aware of their channel, meaning that half of the people didn't know about it, even though it would have probably existed because of being the publicly listed company. So this is what I wanted to share and to open a bit the discussion. To summarize, I think less people seem to be silent, but we should not assume that whistleblowing channels become widely used by just having a technical solution in place. And I'm not even sure if what is the level that we are willing to have reporting through the whistleblowing systems. But let's start the discussion with our experts. So what does this data mean for organizations? So Jenny, what are your views? Should we expect a significant increase in the whistleblowing reporting?
There have been some more, but then there are also some challenges as to what may be reportable matters in this particular system that are covered by the Whistleblowing Act and also the EU directive there, since it's only very serious matters that are subject to the directive and also the Swedish implementing act there. But there's been some increase in our experience of what we've seen, but it's also some matters of the kind that doesn't really qualify. It can be simple matters like someone is not happy with the bonus or something like that. That's not really the kind of things that are subject to the law, so to speak. There are other channels where, of course, they may be right, obviously, too. But it's so it's a bit of a blur, I think.
Definitely, blur is a good word in this context, and I think one thing that makes it blur is also that there are a lot of other mechanisms as well, and that compliance officers may not be aware of all of the misconduct that are reported through the unofficial mechanisms. But should the ethics and compliance team be concerned if they don't have increased amount of reports, even though we are getting more attention towards that topic? So, Karin, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's hard to give only one answer to this question, because it really depends on the underlying reasons and from company to company. So, I mean, it's perfectly fine and actually desirable to have a low number of whistleblowing reports. So whistleblowing should be a last resort when normal communication channels are not, for one or another reason, they are blocked. But of course, it's important to check what the reason is for not receiving the report. So I would, check that definitely.
Yeah. We are getting also questions from the audience, and maybe Mikael, I can ask this one from you. So Gregory is asking here that is the Great Resignation an alternative to the whistleblowing?
I'm sorry, come again. Is
the Great Resignation an alternative to whistleblowing?
Resignation?
Yeah.
To leave the company?
Yeah. This was a question from Gregory.
Yes, okay, Gregory. Hopefully not. I mean, hopefully the company is interested in hearing what is going on in the company. Hopefully there are people who are interested in the company to set things right. But I know of people, of course, that has felt that there has been blockage all over the place, so reporting has not been an option, and then they have ultimately resigned from the company. I absolutely know of these people, and that is, of course, a huge failure in the whole system.
Yeah, good answer. And Ellen is also commenting here on ethics refugees, that those that just leave, are we conducting exit interviews from them? And I think this is a great question to remember, that the people who leave, they have very important information on the reasons behind. But hey, let's move on to then the national implementation of the whistleblowing directive. I think there has been some differences between the countries how they implement the directive in the national whistleblowing laws, and I think Sweden is at least one country that's had specific requirements that have caused some headache also for the compliance officers in the multinationals. Jenny, would you like to comment a little bit on the Swedish whistleblowing law and what are the specific questions and concerns coming from that one?
Yeah, it's actually, I don't know what you're talking about now. It's the regulation regarding sharing of the internal reporting channels. It's the implementation in Sweden that's done by Article 8.6 of the directive, if anyone's interested, so that we have a big legal audience. May just as well mention that. And also the Swede here, we have for some reason chosen to interpret that provision as being exclusive, so that internal reporting channels, they may be shared, but only with regard to intake and investigation, and only in between companies that have 50 to 249 employees for some reason. So it's like that segment that they may share it with each other. And this is, I gotta say, that it's a bit hard to understand. And it's also a bit hard for us to explain to our multinational clients, to be honest, because it's a bit different compared to the way it works in other countries, Denmark included, which is very close. And Denmark has also implemented the directive, but they have chosen a different path, so to speak. So they did not interpret that specific article of the directive in the way that we have in Sweden. And then I also think it's unclear what actually constitutes a channel. Maybe Karin or someone would like to jump in there. Is it just an email address, and how does it work if we have, for instance, 2 different email addresses, but they are started with the same people? I don't know really, and it's not clear to us. But
I'm happy, Jenny, that you have also these questions, because
I would love to learn about this if someone else has more information.
I think it makes the two of us so very, very interesting practical questions concerning this one. And I don't know if anyone has from the audience a very good tips on the practical implementation for the Sweden part. So feel free to share your best practices there on the chat, because I know that this is a topic that people are very interested. Just another question also, Jenny, regarding this kind of a Sweden case still, are the external reporting channels. So any thoughts, anything you can share from Sweden regards of that?
Yeah, definitely. We were a bit curious. That was also, the time was also a bit sparked by this webinar. So we reached out to a number of authorities, the ones that I've been tasked with providing the external reporting channels, just to see how many reports that they had received there. Then we have number 1 there. This is during last year, not much had happened during this year. So the Financial Supervisory Authority, they have received 44 reports on the Whistleblowing Act. The Swedish Authority for Privacy Protection is second in line here, 30 reports. Then there is the Swedish Financial Crime Agency as a third one with 9. So it's quite a big leap down then. And then there are very few for the other ones.
Very interesting. Do you know, Jenny, what happens when these reports are being received, and when does the company get information that there was a report?
We only asked for the numbers, and we almost first thing didn't get that, because it's a lot of secrecy around it, apparently, more than I would have expected, to be honest. Because we also, what we did ask about, just to not to expand the scope here, or what we asked for the statistics, the number of reports, and then we also asked if we could get some kind of information what the report was about, just like what kind of area. Well, we almost didn't get that in some cases. So.
Wow, that's interesting. We need to make the same investigation in Finland and also in the other Nordic countries. It's interesting. So let's continue that discussion later. I think here it would be a perfect point to look at the results from our poll. So if we can have those statistics visible to see that how are the people online thinking that are we going to see an increase in the report during the or have we seen it during the past 12 months? And 47% says that no, and 45% says that yes, and then no says 8%. Yeah, so most of us seem to think that there are no change at all. Very interesting. But thank you for your responses, and I think we can directly put the next poll out and move on to the last topic that we have today, which is the independent and unbiased investigations. First of all, we want to ask from the audience that does your organization have at least one person that is 100% dedicated to work only with the whistleblowing reports? And the reason we're asking this is that we know that many smaller organizations are struggling with the resource questions on who will actually then be the person who is independent and qualified enough to do the investigations. But Mikaela, let me start with you. That what do you see that are the biggest challenges that you have seen in terms of internal investigations? And I think you've seen quite many of those during the years.
Yeah. No, I'm a very big fan of investigations. I really think that if we have professional resources to do investigations and do them as effectively and professionally as possible, we will get invaluable information to the management and the board on what is actually happening in our company. And we will get, from an ethics and compliance and professional point of view, we will get attention and we will get leverage because we have something which really shows that this is important. So I think that investigations are really key. It's like the key part and totally under-evaluated in when we work in ethics and compliance, to really take it seriously and do it professionally. And also coming back to the important point of tying back the loop to the whistleblowers, to have closure, to keep the whistleblower into the loop in such a manner that is possible, that what is going on, that we are taking their thing seriously, that we are doing something, or that we are not doing something, and when we are done doing something. So all of this is a really, really, really important process. And I think it's, when I look around in the big companies in Sweden, we don't put enough effort and skill and professionality in this part.
That's a good, I think, important statement, and I fully agree that this is the part that we can learn all the time. So Karin, I know you are the kind of you like to talk about the protection of whistleblowing and the anonymity of the reporting channels. So this is also a topic that has been debated for long. Should we have the anonymity or not? And the EU directive as such does not require the anonymity, but it only talks about the confidentiality. But what are your reflections, Karin, on the anonymous reporting?
Well, it is a controversial topic, and especially if I again look back 10 years ago, anonymous reporting was very questioned, even more questioned than today. And in some EU countries, anonymous reporting was even forbidden. But the fact is that even if we have much stronger whistleblower protection laws in the EU today, many whistleblowers are not willing to report if they cannot be anonymous. And I mean, there are many reasons for this. Perhaps you don't have the full picture of the potential wrongdoing, and you just have a bad feeling, and then you want to be anonymous, or then someone who you know or your boss are involved in a wrongdoing, and you don't want to harm the personal relationship, but anyway you want to report because it's unethical what you think you see. So anonymity is, fundamental for efficient whistleblowing. And then of course you have to handle, and there you need the professional investigators who can then take these anonymous reports so that the accused so that you don't accuse someone who should not be accused. That is the flip side of this anonymous reporting coin. But still, if you want to have reports when it really matters, you need to allow the whistleblower to be anonymous.
Yeah, Karin, what is your answer to the person who is really against and says that, you know, that then people will start misusing the channel and then we don't have enough information and so on. So how do you sell the idea of the anonymity?
Well, I think that we have that answer today here in our podcast. That is to have trained investigators and people that receive these reports, that are trained and can handle them professionally. That is the answer.
Definitely, yeah. And one angle here is also, of course, the whole privacy topic. So Jenny, what are your thoughts on this topic? So are the privacy laws aligned with the expectations on whistleblowing and internal investigations?
I was going to, it depends. It's not really anything that probably not. Now I'm looking at, because this qualifies in a lot of cases as personal data relating to criminal convictions and offences, as it's called under the GDPR, and also in the supplementary Swedish Data Protection Act. I mean, if you have matters that are reportable under the Whistleblowing Act, and if you are an operator that also have more than 50 workers or employees, then you can process that category of personal data on the basis of a legal obligation. It's a lot of legal English here now, but if you don't have a legal basis to do so automatically. So then you need to apply for a permit. But this is not a new thing. This existed already before the new Whistleblowing Act. So now I think the response would be, no, it's still not aligned, perhaps. But I think for a lot of companies, and Mikael, I'm sure you can chip in here, that it feels a bit odd that they want to do right in some ways, and that they want to have like bad behavior and so on, that they want to bring it to surface, but then they aren't really allowed to do so if there are matters that don't really reach the threshold that has been set by the whistleblower directive. So maybe it's not really aligned. It's maybe not aligned with expectations, like you asked, Nina.
Yeah.
But also, a lot of companies already have permits. They had under the previous regime, like already before GDPR.
Yeah. Thanks, Jenny. Oh, and then we have actually here a very personal story in the chat from Gregory. So Gregory is saying that older employees have more to lose. And Gregory shares with us that as 55-year-old, he spoke up, lost his job, severance and career, and was seemingly unemployed for 6 years after long. And also, as long as we call it speaking up and whistleblowing, no one wants to be labeled as. So, you know, any thoughts from any one of you on how to really handle this kind of a situation, this kind of a situations where actually speaking up becomes a personal disaster?
So unfortunately, I have to say I'm not very surprised, because that personal story is not. I mean, it's unique, but it's not unique, right? We have all heard about how whistleblowers are punished when people figure out who they are, how they are retaliated against, and how difficult we have as human beings to listen to people who have bad information and wants to say something that we don't want to hear. So this is really very much basic human behavior. We dislike people who don't agree, and we dislike hearing about things that we don't want to hear about. And this is something that I think that the ethics and compliance function really has to address, that this is fundamental, something in the culture in the company that we have to work with a lot, because we can talk about speaking up and we can talk about standing up and being courageous, but when we look around, we see that many people have paid a very, very high and steep price for this. And that is not something we can just disregard. So the culture in the companies and this human behavior of of moving into a defense mechanism or striking back. That happens all the time still. And we really need to work with that actively.
I agree. Thank you for being honest, Mikaela. I think that is true. And I think one aspect how we can try to improve and kind of get better is to make sure that we have the kind of qualified investigations and people know how to do it who are being the responsible for handling the investigation. But unfortunately, it seems so that in the smaller organizations, when you are lacking for the resources and you don't have the investigations team or even the compliance officer, you might easily assume that anyone can investigate, and you might then just assign a certain person to do this task. And definitely this is a problem in this field. So this is my last question to you. So how can we help smaller companies to make sure that they are doing the internal investigations appropriately and with the same kind of respect towards the people who are being reported and who are the reporters that the bigger companies do? Any thoughts from any of you?
Okay, I'm going to have some thoughts.
You have 2 minutes time.
I can 100% sympathize, because when I look back at my own career and I think about when I started working in ethics and compliance, which is now more than 15 years ago, I did investigations. I was really bad at doing investigations. Right? It was stressful. It took all my time. I had other tasks to do. It was really, really, really difficult. And still I had to do it because people thought that because you're an ethics and compliance person, you can do investigations. So if I had continued down that path, maybe I would have become better. But fortunately, I had the good sense to employ people who are better to do investigations, who are specialized to this, who understand the legislation that surrounds investigations, and who have experience. And I 100% sympathize that in a smaller company you cannot do this. And then you have to go outside and source people, engage with people who has that service, who can help you to do these investigations. Because one of the worst things that can happen is that somebody blows the whistle, you have a case, and you do a really shitty investigation. And then you have kind of destroyed so much instead of creating something good out of that whistleblowing. So don't do a half good, half bad job here. Do a really good job. And if I had been smart all those years ago, I would have gone down the path of doing good investigations, because that is going to be a sought after skill going forwards. Right? Because now we are talking about whistleblowing, but in the next step, we need to talk about investigations and doing it right.
Definitely. And I would love to hear, Karin, your answer also for this one, because I'm sure that you've got the question from the smaller companies so many times. And while you are giving your response, let's look at the results from the last poll question on the resources.
Okay. No, but I fully agree with what Mikaela says. But one difficulty, of course, when sourcing out an investigation is that if you just, wash your hands and let somebody else handle your investigation, then that person will lose a lot of information. So I think that it's a cooperation between the compliance people in the company, if there are any, or an HR person, or whoever. I mean, you hire the the expertise from the outside. So you don't actually need to be an expert yourself or even have any skills, but you have a lot of information that is super important for the person who then has the skills to do the investigation. So I think that I would like to stress the power of cooperation to get it right also in smaller companies. But it's again, I mean, smaller companies can also have beautiful web pages, for example, because they hire the best best web producers for that, and it goes also for investigations. And it's a, as Mikaela says, it's very important. If you do a shitty job here, I mean, nobody will trust you. So it's a long-term job, and you can ruin your reputation with one bad investigation. So this is key.
Thank you, Karin. This was another honest answer, and I think a perfect way to also summarize today's discussion. So I can see we have many questions waiting in the chat, but let's do so that we will address the questions that we didn't now have time. We will address those in the blog that we will write after this, and we'll send that to you later on. And at this point, I want to say a big thanks for Mikaela, Karin, and Jenny. It's been a pleasure having you joining the EthicsTalk Live, and also thank you for the people online answering the questions and pulling out very important questions from your side. So thank you for joining, and see you all in the next EthicsTalk Live.
Thank you, Nina. Great to be here.
Thank you.